Step into Paranormal M, where the unexplained takes center stage. Subscribe and hit notifications to catch our latest eerie stories. Get ready for a chilling experience. I saw my grandma after she passed away. Hi guys, I'm back almost after 2 years after my last post here. There's something that's been on my mind since the last year. So my grandmother passed away in 2021 due to a cardiac arrest. It happened just a week after my family put her in a centro de cuidados, as we call it in Spain. It's basically a nursing home. That's because she had a very developed Alzheimer's. When she died, I was very shocked. It's because in the medical examinations was shown that her heart was very healthy. For somebody in their 80s, approximately. And still today, I think she died because a nurse or a staff member gave her pills in a slightly high amount and that caused the cardiac arrest. I think it was a mistake. So after 2 years, I was walking one afternoon to hang out with one of my friends. That's when I was near a Plaza Italia in my city, and I saw a woman looking exactly the same as my grandma. Not just a coincidence in the face marks, it was in everything. She walked just like my grandma did because she had an iron bar in the right leg because she had polio when she was young. The face, hair, height, expression, facial wrinkles was exactly the same as hers. She was walking with a blonde old woman by her side. When I saw her, she changed her laughing face to look at me with a face I can only describe as when somebody smiles to not to be rude. It wasn't natural. So I keep walking and I leave her behind. I only stared at her for maybe 2 to 3 seconds, and I was 2 meters away from her about. After this happened, I learned some things about my grandma. It's because of her multiple illnesses. She was like 20 years in the city hospital, and she only saw her 2 sons, my uncles and her daughters, my mom, twice a week. My uncle told me that I only saw her in the years that she was gentle, and my other uncle told me she was a very nice mother and a nice woman. Nowadays, I think my grandma was very nice at first, but she was sad or depressed in the inside. I only remember one time she was like this, when she was bothered or she would get angry or cruel. I used to be with my grandfather all the summer holidays in our village. When I was 6 or so, I was playing while walking with her near a road. She stumbled with my leg and fell in the road, and when one man stopped and helped her get up, when I got home, I remember that she had a scratch on her knee. While she was putting on a band-aid, she told me this, and sorry, all of this is broken English, so I'm elaborating. A neighbor that was my friend, your friendship is over. Quote. I didn't say anything, and the next day she was in a good mood again. I don't know how to explain what happened, but definitely I'm not a schizophrenic or something like it, so I need someone to please explain what happened the day I saw her 2 years after her death. Can anyone tell me what I saw? Took place in an army training area. Early 2023, I was doing a training exercise in the woods of Fort Gregg Adams, formerly Lee, in Virginia. On the first night I was pulling security facing the wood line, I saw a long, lanky, at least 7 or 8 foot silhouette of a man that was completely black. It was about 50 or 80 meters away, and it would peek out slowly from behind a tree and then sprint to another one, and repeated this for a solid 5 minutes before I never saw it again. The sun had not quite started to set yet. I would blink hard and look away, but it was still there. I didn't believe my eyes, and I thought maybe the shadows of the trees were playing tricks on me. I dismissed it as that before other weird stuff started happening that night and over the next couple of days. First night, same night as above. My squad and I heard a long, shrill scream from the area of the woods I saw the thing running around in. Second night. My team and I spotted a 3-man team moving through the woods, and we engaged the team. They vanished and they weren't there anymore. One of the evaluators came over to us confused. They asked what we were firing at since they didn't have any OPFOR, which means opposing forces, over there. After we explained what we saw, he said that at least every other rotation that comes through sees a 3-man team in the woods in the same sector that we were pulling security in. Third night. The OCs, they're the evaluators, they were doing a roll call in the evening. One of the evaluators that had left early in the day yelled, "It's me, I'm over here," from off in the wood line. Couldn't see anybody there, and he had left hours ago. Needless to say, my team and I kept our sleeping bags pretty close together over those nights. More information. Greg Adams had significant Powhatan presence in the area historically. It's also a World War I training area. Not sure if they were spirits or something related to Native American lore. Wanted to know if anybody knows anything about the area or what this could have been. Anybody else experience anything similar if they've been at Greg Adams? Or formerly Fort Lee. A real till death do us part. My story is not so much as a scary one, but more of a sweet story about a woman who wholeheartedly loved her husband, until death did them part. My memory is a little hazy, but I'll tell this story with as much detail as I remember. I was working as a post-life transporter at the time. Mind you, I was still in training. I was following the lead of my trainer. We had gotten the call around midday, I believe, but it was about an elderly woman who needed post-life transportation. It's a funny way to say that. When we arrived at the home, it was absolutely beautiful. It felt so warm and inviting. A gorgeous stone pathway led us to the door, and we were welcomed in by her family. That was before being led to see the woman that we would be transporting. We talked with the family. One of their requests was that we try and get her ring from her finger to give to them. They had already tried and had no luck. Of course, we agreed, and we were led down the hallway to meet her. Upon entering the room, we saw this beautiful elderly woman lying peacefully in her bed. She lied there, covered in one of those sort of photo blankets filled with photos of her and her husband. I remember her room being on the smaller side, but looking around the room, there was so much love. Photos covered the walls with pictures of her family. As we got ready to transport her, my trainer started by trying to remove her ring. She tried every trick she knew to get this ring for what felt like 15 to 20 minutes. No luck. I asked her if I could try. I remember being so nervous because obviously I've never removed a ring from as they put it, a decedent before. I tried for a few moments and I had no luck, but something didn't feel right. It was as if I could feel the pain of this woman and the devastation that it felt to have her ring taken from her. I remember just repeating over and over again in my head, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." So I stopped for a moment and I looked up at her again, scanning the photos of her and her husband on the blanket. I could feel the love that she had for him, this immense wholehearted love. She didn't want to let him go. It was just some tattooed girl that she didn't know trying to take one of the only things that she had connecting them. I don't remember if I said it out loud or in my head, but I do remember saying or thinking, "I know you love him, but your family really wants to keep your ring safe for you. I promise that I'll get it to them." After this, I tried one more time to remove the ring from her finger, and it came off. No hesitation, no forceful pulling. It just simply came off. I remember my trainer looking at me in disbelief. She later told me that there's no way that the ring should have just come off like that. In the end, we gave the family her ring, and they were so happy and surprised that we were able to get it out for them. I always think about this woman and I aspire to feel and experience the type of love that she had for her husband. A real till death do us part. That's a good one. Two repetition dreams and other strange things. I had, when I was very young, two dreams that still haunt me to this day. I still have these same two dreams every so often now, 50 plus years later. And another weird thing that happened to me as well. Dream number 1. I used to live a block away from the Mississippi River. In this nightmare, I could see this huge foot, like the foot of a giant. I used to think that it was Goliath, slowly and deliberately stepping on each house starting from by the levee down toward my house. It would get to the house like 2 houses away, then just stop, standing there. I'd always wake up at that part of the dream. Dream number 2. In this dream, me and my mom and dad were driving across the Huey P. Long Bridge going toward New Orleans. I grew up in Luling, 17 miles southwest of there. I was in the back seat and they were just driving along as normal. All of a sudden, I just see this huge brick wall ahead. Dad wasn't slowing down any, and him and Mom were just talking like usual. We kept coming towards that wall, and in my dream I was screaming to please stop. Don't you see that wall? Please stop. I'd wake up just as we were about to make impact. I still have that dream to this day every once in a while. I used to have nightmares about falling off that same bridge too. The other weird thing that happened to me is I was in bed but not asleep. I could hear a scraping noise on the street closest to my window. It sounded like a skateboard going back and forth out there. Every time I got up and looked out the window, there was nothing and no one out there, but I could still hear the noise. I finally quit looking and curled up in the bed as closest to the door as I possibly could. One last thing. A friend of mine, several years ago, told me they kept having dreams about me. I almost told him to leave me alone, but I'm grateful I didn't know. He told me that it was me in childhood and I had gone to a funeral way out in the country. And from a time forward, a ghost had been following me all my life. What does that mean? Following me? How? He described the place we went to after a funeral, like way out in the country to a T. Perfect description of it. Never talked to anybody about the funeral before and where it was. I felt many, many times in my life that something was near me, but never really saw anything. The closet door. I've always believed my house was normal. Nothing strange or creepy about it. It's a relatively new building built in the 90s and I live alone. I like the idea of, not having neighbors too close. So I chose a house in a more isolated area. But for the past few weeks, there's been something I can't explain. I am jealous. It all started one night when around 2 a.m. I woke up suddenly. There was no noise, but I had that strange feeling of not being alone. I turned toward the door of my bedroom, and that's when I noticed it. The closet door down the hallway was slightly ajar. Now, I always made a habit of closing every door in the house before going to bed, just to avoid waking up and seeing a half-open door in the dark. Thought maybe I'd forgotten to close it, so even though I felt a little bit uneasy, I decided to get up and shut it. Closed it properly, pulling it up until I heard the click of the latch. I went back to bed, trying not to think about it, but it took a while before I could fall back asleep. The next night, same thing. Around 2 a.m., I wake up again and the closet door is open again, even though I had closed it. This time I got a chill down my spine, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I hadn't closed it properly. In the following days, though, the situation worsened. Every single night I woke up at the same time, and every night the door was open, no matter how carefully I closed it. One evening I decided to place a chair against the door so I could hear if anything moved. When I woke up, I found the chair shifted and the door slightly open. No sign of forced entry, no animals or strong winds that could have moved it. And every night, always at the same time, the door keeps opening. I can't sleep well anymore, and I'm starting to think maybe I'm not really alone in this house. Dreams/encounters with dead relatives. So my father passed away 2 years ago while sleeping. Saddest moment of my life. That afternoon he called me over my phone and we had a short conversation. When I hang up the phone, I have a feeling to say I love you to him, but never mind. When I was young, he told me that when my grandmother, his mother-in-law, passed away, he saw her several times in the house. She told him that she was there to protect me. And through his life, he has several paranormal encounters like this. A couple of days after he passed away, I was sleeping. I hear from my living room his voice saying, "Oh no." Then I wake up and everything seems to be a dream. I have another couple of dreams that I don't remember, but I do remember one in specific. I was walking around a street and I see an old friend in front of the building, and when I reach him, my father was there. I was shocked. I hug him, and he told me, "Don't worry, I'm waiting for my friends to do a barbecue." By the way, that's one of his favorite things in the world. This was between the first 6 months since he passed away. Almost a year later, I had a dream in memory. I was in a party like I remember as a child, full of relatives and friends of the family. When I watched the other room, I noticed my godfather and my dog. And by the way, both are dead more than 10 years ago. That's when I noticed that I say louder, "If you two are out there, my dad must be there." Then I run to the room, and suddenly the room starts to be longer, avoiding me to reach them. I wake up very nervous after that. I tell this to close friends, and they tell me it's just a dream. And then, about 6 or 8 months ago, my wife and I decided to move to Europe. At the beginning, I was worried about the leave that my mother with my 2 sisters, and I feel like I was a bad son. Then one night I was sleeping. I wake up because I hear the voice of my father calling me like he was next to my bed. My wife told me that he was my father telling me that everything was okay. Well, now I'm living in Europe since September, having some issues trying to find a job, and I'm really very nervous. My wife always tells me to chill and to wait. The other night again, I dream about I was in a family reunion or something similar. My mother was talking very loud, and my father was there, and really shy. Then suddenly, he stands from his chair to go to another room and came with 2 cans of beer, and he said to me, "These people are going to think we're stupid. Have a beer with me." That's kind of his behavior when my mother asks him to be polite. So I was rethinking everything, and this could only be dreams or jokes from my mind, or it could be that, well, he's taking a visit to me. My cat came to say goodbye to me the day he died. Several years ago, I had a cat. She had been there since I was born. She was the most beautiful of all. We loved each other very much, and every day she followed me everywhere. Came to sleep with me until I woke up when I was time to sleep. When I went to class in the morning, she would always wait for me at the front door as soon as I got home, run toward me like we hadn't seen each other for days. In that period of my life, she was the only thing that I had, and I was the only thing that she had. One day, my father forced us to move to another house before we could empty and return ours, so she was alone, miles away. Found out later that at this time she stayed in the front of the door waiting. One day, my father told me she was dead. I cried so much that night I felt guilty for not having anywhere to protect her and to be there for her. Fell asleep that night and I had a dream. I was in front of my old house and she was waiting for me there. When she saw me, she ran toward me and I hugged her and I told her how much I loved her. Thanks to this dream, I tell myself that maybe she wanted to say goodbye to me in her own way. I've never had a cat since because no one could be as kind and as loving as she was. I need an explanation for this. It's something that happened a long time ago. That day I had turned on a very hot bath. It's because my baths are always very hot. I sent a message on the phone and then I put on a piece of furniture next to the bathtub. I remember lying down and then nothing. I woke up, there was no water all over the bathroom floor. Or rather, there was water all over the bathroom floor, and my phone had fallen on the floor even though I hadn't touched it. Then I remember the message I sent before I laid down and had this black hole and saw that 20 minutes had passed. To this day, I still don't understand what could have happened during those 20 minutes. Still scares me. If I had lost consciousness, I couldn't have stayed like that for 20 minutes, could I? Oh yeah, you could. Night shifts in a care home. I work in a care home in the UK, and I work nights. I thought I'd share a few of the ghostly stuff I've seen and heard because the spirits at work seem to love to scare me senseless. I used to work evenings. Started with just footsteps behind me, particularly when I was on my own. Then they started scratching my head and tapping it. I then changed to night shifts, and certain spirits started popping up that night, and the night staff have seen them too. One night about a year ago, I was walking down a staircase. To my right is a corridor that leads to a dead end. I looked down the corridor and I saw a figure. She was almost glowing, she was so white. She had no face and very straggly hair. She was peeping out of the doorway of the bathroom. I could only see her head and upper body. Although she had no face, it felt like she was watching me. I turned to call for my coworker, but when I glanced back, she was gone. She doesn't really at least bother me too much. Seems like a nice spirit, and I've never worried about seeing her again, and I haven't. Another spirit is what staff call the Shadow Man. He lurks behind people and in corners. He only gets very close to one staff member who I regularly work with. I've only seen him one in the front entrance, and I froze, and so did he, and one night me and this one coworker were doing cleaning in the corridor with all the living rooms. We were standing there having a rant about general stuff that was annoying us, and for context, by the way, the spirits never like us being negative. As we were ranting, all the living rooms started making really loud noises all at once. I felt brave and I told them to shut up. I turned away from the noise and this one coworker told me the Shadow Man was behind me. I didn't look, so I don't know if he was really that, but the noise sort of quieted down. It stopped our discussion, but when we started up again, it started as well. Other shorter stories would be things like me hearing a man shouting, "Help me," with no man around as we were in a corridor filled with ladies who were about to sleep. Another time, it was when I was walking out of the kitchen. All of the cutlery started banging around. I ran so fast and refused to be in that kitchen once it got dark outside. Another is the people we seen sat in chairs in the peripheral vision. But whenever we look, there's never anyone there. Then there's whistling that happens so close to us. We have to pretend not to hear it because it feels very wrong. Another time is I was sat in the staff room on my own and something said my name in my ear. I ignored it. Then when I'm in the laundry room, I can hear things in the corridor like walking frames, even when everyone is asleep. And another time there was screaming upstairs. Couldn't find the source. It was like When we went to one end of the corridor, it screamed on the opposite side, and we'd go back and forth without finding the person screaming. On another shift, that's where we sat in the staff room at around 5 a.m., and there was a walking stick sound in the corridor. We went out to see if someone was awake. They weren't. On one night, me and another care worker doing normal resident assistance were both working with one person. I suddenly start hearing banging noises, but my other coworker couldn't hear it. At first, I ignored it after my coworker said she didn't hear anything and summed it up to an overactive imagination. Then began getting louder. Turned to my coworker and said somebody must be breaking in. She told me to look out the front window as there's a view of the main entrance. No one was there. And again, I tried to ignore it, but when we left this particular room, we decided to go up the corridor. Then we passed the bathroom I previously said I saw a peeping woman. The door was closed this night. Suddenly, the door started banging really loud and shaking. We ran back down the corridors. We were all scared. All alarms were on the doors, so we knew no residents were awake, and we still have no idea what was in that bathroom. Another night, I was on shift again, walking down the same corridor with the staff member. We had done our hourly checks on all residents and suddenly started hearing on a loop, "Help me, help me, help me," in a woman's voice. At first, we think it's a resident and instantly start checking rooms again. Nobody's awake, but we can still hear "help me." It was after checking rooms that we listened closely and neither of us recognized the voice. We didn't leave each other's side all night. Left the care home temporarily about 3 months ago. I can go back at any point, but it's so scary. I'm not very good at writing, so I'm terrible at setting the scene of how scary this place is, but I've always wondered what it is in the home and how aware they are of their surroundings. I don't like that they know my name and seem to target night staff. Don't blame you. Something freaky just happened. So I hopped on Discord with my friend. Before we even started chatting, and we had our cameras on too, I said, "I'll be right back. I need to get my water bottle from my car. I'm fucking thirsty." I stood up, took my headphones off, walked outside. Walked inside, went into my kitchen for a second, hung my keys up, looked for my computer, and I see my friend looking terrified and freaking out. So I run to my headphones, sit down, ask what's wrong. And in his point of view during all of that, he said as I stood up and went outside, he started singing to himself super loud. He heard my voice in his headphones go, "I'm so fucking hungry." And he said it was super clear and no doubt my voice, and to the point where he got embarrassed because he didn't think I had my headphones on. He said, "Wait, do you have your headphones on?" He saw me in the kitchen hanging my keys up without my headphones, and he said, "Can you hear me?" And I clearly couldn't. I didn't say I'm so fucking hungry. I said I was so thirsty, and I was before he started singing to himself and before he took my headphones off. My boyfriend was across the house playing video games, and I asked him if he never said anything like it apparently. Didn't even leave his room. Even though the entire thing was only 30 seconds, I doubted it was him in the first place. And by the way, I know for 100% certainty that I didn't speak those words out loud. I don't talk to myself, and if I did, I wouldn't forget. You might. What could have done this? This is really freaking me out, especially because it wasn't even the exact thing I said. It was hungry switched to thirsty. My friend was genuinely scared and would never make this up and super serious all the time. LOL. So I fully believe him. And that's why I'm so freaked out. Also, if I'm not mistaken, I remember hearing that stuff that mimics is evil. Bad vibes. So yeah, not feeling great. Strange encounter. IDK. Most of the time when people have quote-unquote supernatural encounters, they're alone. It's dark, and they usually have a reason to be extra alert or paranoid, such as being out in the forest or exploring an abandoned building. I've even had some weird experiences myself, which I can chalk up to my mind not processing things correctly. One experience stands out to me as being different, though. 3 summers ago, I worked a job painting apartments. The painting company worked in crews, where each crew of people would be assigned a different work site. I was the apartment crew lead, which is basically synonymous with manager. Apartment crew lead was a fast-paced, hectic position which required 10 to 11-hour workdays, managing a crew of the least experienced painters and moving between 3 or 4 work sites every day. All that is to say that while I'm working, I'm focused. In a bright environment around other people at all times, and my body's constantly in motion. It's the very last place I'd expect to start imagining things, which is why this specific instance stands out. My crew was about halfway through repainting a 2-bedroom apartment. I had finished rolling out the first bedroom and moved to the second. I was about halfway through filling the ceiling. The first thing I noticed was the distinct strong scent of vanilla. The paint that we use has no smell, and the primer we use was PVC, which smells like apples. But we didn't need to use primer in that apartment, so I don't believe the smell was from any painting products. I've smelled vanilla randomly a couple of times in the past, so I assumed at first it could have been an olfactory hallucination, but it was the strongest one I've ever had. About 15 seconds after I started smelling vanilla, my entire body was suddenly gripped with an almost paralyzing fear. All my hair stood on end and I could feel tears in my eyes. My sinuses started swelling like I was going to cry or sneeze. My arms started shaking with fear so badly I couldn't keep the roller steady. I put it down in the bucket to rest for a bit. It felt fight or flight, but I couldn't really figure out what I was going to fight or where my body wanted to run. I turned around to leave the room, and as I turned around, I saw a painting rag drop to the floor a few feet behind me. From the speed at which it accelerated downwards, I think it had been dropped from around the height of my head. Although I don't know if it had been floating or what. All I saw was the fall. We use a lot of rags in apartments for cleaning the ends of the 6-inch rollers. They're made of an old, cut-up piece of t-shirt. It was pretty brief, but I definitely saw it falling. Couldn't have been sitting on anything because the room was empty, so I don't know how it dropped. The next thing I heard was a scraping originating from the closet. The closet doors had always taken off, so I could see it was empty. The walls were textured plaster, so it was pretty distinct and erratic scraping sound. It started in the closet area, then one distinct scrape started traveling coming toward me across the ceiling. One started coming toward me across the wall. There were 100% 2 different scrapes. I could hear 2 different scraping pitches between the ceiling and the wall. In my mind, it sounded like how I would imagine it would sound if somebody had been walking while scraping their fingernails with one hand on the wall and one on the ceiling. I left the room quickly, and the noise, the fear, and the smell all stopped. Still had a lot of residual adrenaline in my system. Talking with my 2 coworkers who were finishing painting the kitchen, they had also heard the scraping, but didn't seem to notice as they usually had a lot of scraping and noise going on. The 6-inch roller makes an almost identical noise. When it's edging in a ceiling line, we're painting ceilings that day, so we weren't edging ceilings. It's distinctly coming from 2 different places. Pretty skeptical of ghosts, or spirits, or anything, but I can't for the life of me think of an explanation for it all. My only one is that I had hallucinated all of it somehow, but that doesn't really explain the scraping. I don't have any mental illness or anything. Any thoughts, maybe? I found the subreddit and posted this wall of text as I'm just trying to make sense of it all. Haven't had anything similar since. My so far, in quotes, experience. So I don't know if there's a character limit, so I'll try to sum a lot of this up quickly. When I was 7 years old, I was showering alone, and with the door shut. I was close to being done, and suddenly the light, the fan, and the water turned off. There was a moment I was in darkness. It felt like 3 to 5 seconds, and suddenly everything turned back on. When I looked out, the shower was like, to see who was messing with me, I froze cold. There was a tall and seemingly thick, darker than black silhouette of a being reflecting next to me, outside the shower, but only visible in the mirror. I was petrified and I couldn't move or scream. As quickly as it came, it vanished. I hurried up and grabbed my clothes and booked it down the stairs to where I attempted to speak to my mom. She told me, "Wait a minute, I'm on the phone." And so I waited about 2 minutes. My mom returned from the garage and into the living room where I was seated silent and confused after what I just saw. And she said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but your dad just passed away." At that moment, I didn't understand death, let alone ghosts or whatever I saw. But I knew something was wrong, and I was terrified of the upstairs bathroom and would always use it or shower with the door wide open and panic internally if anyone tried to close it. I had a recurring nightmare about that bathroom where a monster human woman would look down at her hands in the mirror, start screaming, and then look up at me still screaming very loudly until I would wake up. That sucks. I spent a lot of time alone as a kid in the basement, but I wasn't always alone. A buddy of mine was with me in the basement playing Guitar Hero. Suddenly, a white, massive, thick cloud or mist, impossible to look through. It zoomed out of one of the rooms to our right and disappeared at the wall. It was very quick, but I asked my friend if he saw that. He said yes. I saw shadows while I was alone a few times behind the bar area toward the storage unit, but I always pretended that I didn't see anything and assumed my mind was playing tricks on me. I knew at least I was scared of being in the basement. Yet that's where some of my video games were, and I always did puzzles by myself down there. I always felt like I was being watched. Another moment, somebody was with me when I was in the office. My stepdad was helping me with homework, and we both looked up and saw a brown, gray, white, black blur. It shot up the stairs. I knew a little better, and I asked him what did he see, and he responded saying something shot up the stairs. More years went after my dad's death, and ghostly, shadowy encounters seemed to go away. My mom became an every-night alcoholic, gone 4 to 6 nights a week for years, and my stepdad hated me. Often, we had chaotic battles. I was terribly depressed between 10 and 19, and I blamed God for a lot of the problems in my life. Constantly tried forming a relationship with the man in the clouds, but always felt rejection, as if everything was continually getting worse. My mom got caught cheating on him thanks to me, and what I thought was a blessing with my mom being caught and me being forced on a stranger's couch, yet seeing my mom daily became a curse. I thought that since she was drinking at home, that's a good thing. Yet she was overtly mean, and mean beyond logic, and was always hurling insults, trashing the place, and very, very angry at me even though I did no wrong. I could swear several dozens of times I saw evil in her eyes, bloodshot red, cacklingly rude and violent. I've seen my mom crab walk after me while I was trying to get away from her. She'd call the police on me while I was sleeping after she destroyed parts of the house. She called my P.O. to say I was being violent. One day, she cut my brother across his face with a box cutter. Whoa. Convinced him to blame me when questioned at school about the cut across his face and into his lips. Luckily, or rather, lucky me, I was in a temporary mental hospital for kids because she kicked me out and I slept in the front of my school. When the teacher and police asked why I had cigarettes, I responded wrong and I had said that I was depressed and they took me away. But that saved me from assault with deadly weapons charges. Yet my mom was never arrested as the truth never came out till a few years later. And somehow my ex-stepdad showed me proof that she was arrested the night before with assault with a dangerous weapon in her current husband. Okay. Yet no cops connected the dots. Yet lucky for me, I had a solid alibi. So anyways, new house with the stepdad brought ghostly things as well. One day I was sitting on the couch after school and the doorbell rang. I got up, looked outside, no one was there. Sat down and the doorbell rang again twice. I hurried to the door and looked outside, looked down my street, no one was around. The dogs were going ballistic this entire time, but when I sat down again it rang 3 times before I could even sit down, and again I walked outside, walked around to my house and back inside. Before I could even close that heavier door, the doorbell rang super fast. Didn't stop for a good 10 or 20 seconds. When dogs were freaking out, I cussed at the potential ghost or demon that was there. It stopped, but I was spooked a bit. Another moment happened when I was outside on the phone talking to my dad's fiancée. When he passed, and suddenly from the woods I hear a faint yet audible "help me" in the woman's voice. I paused, looked toward the moonlit woods, and continued my conversation. Then I heard a woman scream "help me" in a loud yet agonizing pitch. I lit another cigarette with Miss Joyce on the phone still and heard it again, but this time in a man's voice and louder. It repeated itself this time, seemingly very angry, louder and closer. It sounded like it was no longer in the woods, but in my backyard less than 50 feet from me. I knew something paranormal and dark was happening, but curiosity for answers locked me in place. It screamed in rage one last time. That's when I booked it inside. It sounded next to me yet all around, and I still get goosebumps even while typing this 12+ years later. After being kicked out so many times by my mom and never having a real place to go, I became a thief. I stole from unlocked cars, and one day I stole a car. This landed me in prison, but the stories don't end there. I had my girlfriend over, who I was with before prison, and we were again at my mom's new husband's house. I was going to meet my girlfriend down in the basement, which is my room, to start a puzzle. I was talking to my mom when my girl said that she was going downstairs. I quickly finished the conversation and went to follow her. Through the glass door of the basement, I looked down and saw my girlfriend's pale face staring back up at me from the bottom of the steps, and when I opened the door, she no longer was standing there. I turned on the light and proceeded down the steps, turned on the basement lights and looked around. She wasn't down there at all. I said her name a few times, and when I go back upstairs, my girlfriend was at the top asking me what I was doing. I told her what had just happened. She said that she had used the bathroom first, and I was puzzled, but I wasn't scared. This is kind of a new haunting, so... We did a puzzle for the rest of the night, and she left. Came back the next day. We're in the far back of the basement doing a puzzle, and suddenly we hear a sharp shh sound from the opposite end toward the stairs. Slightly confused of what the sound was, not really thinking it was paranormal yet, we continued on. Yet again it sounded. Shh. Sounded, well, clearly audible. I joked maybe it's the furnace. Yet the furnace was a good 15-20 feet away. Again, but this time it moved to the left of the stairs to the basement kitchen area. Again, we joked maybe a rat in the air duct. Again, shh. Yet this time it moved again by the furnace area. Now I knew something was going on, and I scooted closer to her, facing the rest of the basement. And again, shh, like air escaping a tire. It's the only way I can really describe it. Suddenly, I saw a mirage-like form around the treadmill. And again, shh, it was loud. It was at a maybe 90+ degree angle away from where it started. I then explained to her I'm feeling rage, like when I want to argue, but admit I have no reason to be angry. Then shh, yet this time, it was somewhere right in front of us. Then she jumped and I asked what. She said it again, that it was in her ear. And then shh, again, yet it was directly in between us, surprising us both. We both jumped. I pushed her away from me to go upstairs, and I started calling this thing every name in the book and threatened it with the Bible, and it never did it again. That was a good, sketchy moment. We got a place in a hotel to be together every day until more money was saved. How can you save money renting a hotel? My mom was too hostile and drunk to be around, and there were fights all the time. My girl witnessed her bad side. At the hotel room, the light would turn on, and strangely also the sink. She would say she sees shadows in the dark, but I said we're sort of matrixing shapes in the dark. Yet I swear I'd seen them as well. Since then, nothing much has happened. Yet I can't say my life got any better. I've always felt like this thing follows me around, and I know it's not my dad, and I suspect it to be truly evil. Yet I don't really know. I appreciate anybody reading this, and I've struggled with this stuff for years, and I believe the only reason I believe in God is, well, because I've witnessed evil. Yet now, my stepdaughter and wife claim to see shadows at night. I just hope it's not starting again. Maybe I was vulnerable, but I shared a moment with other people, and all I can say is yes, ghosts or demons are real. Have a great night. Have you ever had an undeniable experience? Hey up everyone, long time lurker, first time poster here. Not sure if I'm really not the first or the last to try this, but I've recently started a YouTube channel where I shared true spooky stories while lounging on my beanbag by the fire. Honestly, I've had my fill of faceless, AI-driven channels and wanted to create something more personal and down to earth. I agree. Think Mr. Balin, but with a stronger focus on the supernatural and a chilled-out vibe like sitting with a mate, swapping eerie tales over a few cheeky ales after twilight. My goal is to build a cozy corner where people can enjoy spine-tingling stories and maybe even open their minds to the mysteries of the unknown along the way. Just released my first video where I talk about my personal encounter with the Hat Man. I'd share it here, but I know there's rules about self-promotion. It's a humble start, and I know there's plenty of room for improvement, but I'm keen to learn and grow with each story I tell. That's where you lovely folks come in. I'm on the lookout for true spooky stories that I could share on the channel. Of course, I'd give full credit and provide a link to the finished video once it's published, and additional heads up, I'll likely alter the script somewhat to suit my ridiculous Yorkshire voice. No good at putting on the spooky voice, though it's a little bit more conversational in tone. Got a few personal experiences lined up, but I'd love to mix them in with stories from others to keep the content fresh and diverse. If you got a tale you'd like to share, please do post it here or drop me a DM. Hate to say, but I feel like I'm advertising somebody that should be me. The Old Warden House. Back in 2006, our whole family used to live in a rural town called Lengong. At that time, Lengong is still undeveloped. Most of the town is just forest and small road. My father worked as a school security guard. My mother owns a small sort of, a Sendol shop, Cendol. It's a dessert, sweet and cold. On July of that year, our house got burned down. After that incident, we really had no money to rent or buy a house, and out of mercy from the headmaster of the school that my father worked at, they allow us to stay at the old warden house near the abandoned school hostel. We were grateful for it. For the first few months living there, it was okay, but on the third month we started to experience this weird haunting. One night when my father's out working night shift around 11 p.m., suddenly we heard someone knocking on our door. My mother just opens the door because she thought my father had come back home. There's no one outside. At that time, there was only me, my older brother, and my mother in the house. My mother immediately closed the door. I was scared, but my mother and brother calmed me down. It's weird, because nobody lived near her house, and her house mostly surrounded by forest, and just beside it, there's the abandoned school hostel. But it was locked and abandoned for a long time, a long time ago. As we're all ready to go to sleep, the door is being knocked again, but this time it was loud and aggressive, as if somebody was trying to break into our house. All of us started to panic, and my mother yells, "Siapa tu? Tolonglah." Oh, jeez. So, translated, it says something along the lines of, "Who is that? Please don't disturb us." And the knocking suddenly stopped, and we hear footsteps circling our house. The footsteps sounded like somebody's walking slowly but dragging their feet. We were so scared, and my mother started to recite some Quranic verses. We're Muslim. A few minutes later, the footstep sounds are finally gone. And that's the first time ever in my life that I experienced something like that. So scary. Could never forget it. A few weeks later, same situation. My father's not home and working night shift. Around 12 a.m., 1 a.m. in the morning, we're woken up by the sound of something running on top of the roof. For your information, the Warden house is an old Malay traditional house. Most parts of the house are made of wood and uses zinc rooftop. It was so loud, and it sounded like something with two legs running and hopping on the top of the roof. It goes on for a few minutes, and then we hear the same slow footsteps circling our house, but this time it started to scratch on the wall as if trying to scare us. All of this haunting goes on for almost 2 years. Then my parents decided to move out of the house and found a new house to rent near the town. We all started to pack our stuff, clean the house and surroundings. My father borrows a lorry from his friend, and we all load up the stuff on the lorry. After we finish and load the stuff, my father goes checking the house to make sure everything's okay before locking the door. Then my father enters the lorry with the older brother while my mother drove her mini scooter with me. As we're leaving the house, I turn my head around just to look at the house for one last time. What I saw next is something that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. I saw a figure like human, exactly on the top of an abandoned hostel roof, sitting like in a squat position. Got long legs and hands that's touching the roof. Got long hair that covered the whole face, and the skin's pale and bluish. I was horrified by what I saw. I immediately turned my head back, closed my eyes, and hugged my mother just tightly from behind as we ride the scooter. A few days later, I told my family about what I saw the day we moved out, but no one really believes me. They say maybe I was seeing something else. I wrote this just to tell you guys that what I saw that day is real, and I swear it's true. 7 years old when that happened, but I know what I saw with my own eyes, and I can still remember it. Thank you for those who read it till the end. I kind of feel a little bit frustrated because my family didn't believe me, and I kept it to myself all this time. Rez. I was a city girl, born and raised up until Kokum moved my cousins and I to the reservation when I was 14. We went from having all the amenities of the city, such as access to malls, roller rinks, and recreation centers that was just across the street from our place, to living in the country, where everything was an hour or two drive down dusty roads. We farmed our own vegetables, collected water, and collected wood for the wood-burning stove that we used to cook on. It was an adjustment for sure. Our neighbors' houses were through the bush, and they were a worn-down trail that connected the houses. It was the middle of summer when the heat was at its highest during the day. My younger cousins were sorting the wood that I was splintering into small pieces for the stove in front of the house. They were making piles against the house from each wood that I finished with. We were quietly doing this when I glanced up to see this man making his way to face us from the bush trail in the distance. He was tall, and I remembered thinking how, hot he must have been because he wore this long trench coat. Looked like it might have been made out of black leather. It was long and went almost down to his boots. And boots, another odd accessory. On his head, he wore what looked like an old-fashioned cowboy hat or a fedora. He walked in long strides, and I wondered how he managed to stay completely in the shadow. The sun was high overhead. It dappled through the trees, yet the light didn't touch him at all. I couldn't make out any features on his face, and it was just dark. He was definitely solid, definitely a man. I told Kokum, who was behind me, that it looked like we were going to have a visitor. Maybe she could put on a pot of tea. She looked up and her expression changed. She got this intense look on her eye. Kokum told us to get in the house. Quickly, she snapped. Kokum never really spoke to us like that in such a sharp, impatient tone, so we booked it into the house. Once inside, she yelled at me in the locked front door and she locked the back door. I was alarmed and did as she told me. She closed the curtains. I was confused. My little cousins left to the back bedroom to close the curtains, and my little cousin maybe was 9 years old. She came to me and said that the man was peeking into the window back there. The man never spoke. No hello, no nothing. He didn't knock on the front door either. Our youngest cousin told us that the man was peering into another window on the other side of the house. I got the creeps as I imagined him trying to look into all the windows of the house, and I was so disturbed by what was happening. Kokum didn't offer any explanation either, and also weren't allowed out the rest of the day. Things like this didn't happen to us in the city. It was only years later that I found out that people have seen that man too. It was some paranormal thing that I still don't understand. Who and what was it? Why does it show up like that? It was in the middle of the day too. You'd think things like that wouldn't be around. Have any of you ever experienced this? Ghosts in the Ghetto. As a young mom, I couldn't afford much. There were these 2 rental units just off of 22nd Street. The owner of this building was basically a slumlord. I got to give him some credit, though. He did attempt to renovate, and he evicted all the problematic tenants that used to live there. The building manager was being more picky about who they let in the building now, too. So that was why the apartment building was half empty when I moved in there with my 3-year-old. I got to know the neighbors quick. I had a woman named Rebecca. She told me that her previous boyfriend died from heart complications not too long ago. Then she told me how his friend Jim was there for her and how they leaned on each other during their time of mourning. She said she moved out of her place to live with Jim in his basement suite. She wasn't much older than I was. Pretty much dark curly hair, pale skin. I nodded my head and commiserated with her. It was good that they had each other. Grief was hard enough on your own. If you can find a shoulder to lean on, then it was that much lighter. They offered me a beer, but I declined. And that was Rebecca. I was curled up on the couch watching TV alone one night. It was well after midnight when somebody knocked on my door. My immediate thought was, who the hell would be knocking on my door at this hour? My nosy self headed over to look into the peephole. Standing there in the hallway under the fluorescent lighting was this older gentleman. He was wearing a short-sleeved, colorful print shirt, khaki shorts, brown sandals. He was a white guy with silver messy medium-length hair, and he had a bit of a paunch. I opened the door, and he looked at me with these sad blue eyes, and he asked, "Is Rebecca home?" I furrowed my brow and then told him that she didn't live in this unit anymore. I told him that she moved into Unit 3 downstairs. The expression on his face after I said that, it was a mixture of surprise, disappointment, and something else. He quickly looked at his feet, and I went to close the door, but he looked up at me, and then he said he was thirsty. He asked me if I could please give him a glass of water. I was a bit taken aback because, well, what a strange request. That is not a strange request. That is the most normal request. Ever the helpful person, I said, "Sure, but stay there." Shut the door, locked it, and then headed to the kitchen. Ran a cold tap of water into a mug, then unlocked the door, opened it, and as I was handing him the water, I got this strong gut feeling to not touch his skin. I carefully avoided his fingers. He took a few sips and then handed me the mug back. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt alarmed. Danger. I didn't let his hand touch mine. Then I closed the door quickly. My heart sped up a bit. The hallway was chilly. My fingertips felt cold. I peeked into the peephole and there was no one there. I was uncomfortable for the rest of the night, like, why did I tell him where Rebecca lived? I shouldn't have done that. felt like I did something really wrong. It was as if I just gave permission of some kind, or I just allowed something to happen. And honestly, I don't remember if these things happened before or after that night, but the lights would burn out, especially the dining room. It was frequent enough that I asked management to check the electrical. They said everything was good and there was nothing broken or loose in the wiring. I ended up leaving the dining room dark. My boyfriend was over one evening. The three of us were watching TV together in the living room. My boyfriend got up to make himself a sandwich. There was an old wooden room divider between two rooms. We could see him at the corner fixing a snack. We had our own on the coffee table. My boyfriend had to walk around the divider through the dark dining room area to get to the kitchen. My 3-year-old said, "Mommy, why is that man staring at us?" I asked, "What man? Where is he?" My 3-year-old pointed to the dark dining room area. I looked, but of course no one was there. I was really creeped out, but I asked, "What does he look like?" "He has big fat eyes and his hair's like this." Then my child showed me with their little hands how the man's hair stuck out, then made wavy fingers. Ugh. I didn't want to scare my baby, so I pretended that what they had said didn't frighten me. My boyfriend, on the other hand, was still in the kitchen. He paused mid-slice after he heard that. Then my 3-year-old said, "He's your friend who shouts off the lights." I shuddered. I wrapped my child up in the blanket so my boyfriend came over to join us. I stayed up that whole night just watching over them. Houston House. A few years ago, my husband found a 3-bedroom bungalow that was cheap to rent. The owner who inherited it was a friend of my husband's. This guy's father had passed away the previous year, and the house was sitting empty that whole time. The owner didn't really want to live in it, and he didn't even bother returning to the house to remove all the furniture and clothing or belongings from it either. I didn't even get a chance to see the place before we moved in. My husband sprung it on me last minute after our apartment lease was up. It looked okay from the outside. The windows were dark, but of course nobody lived there. Once my husband opened the door and switched on the light in the foyer, I felt that this place wasn't empty. I felt like something was in there watching us right away. I knew the original owner passed away, so I just figured it was just spooking myself that first evening. The whole house was full of furniture, knickknacks, personal items, clothing, and it was dark and dusty. I was depressed looking at it all. Part of the deal for cheap rent was that we had to clean it all. We got a truck, cleaned out all the majority of the house, and we kept some things like the almost new couch, the armchairs, the TV, and the end tables. We kept the master bedroom furniture in there because the mattress was new, the bedding and the furniture was new, and it hadn't been used yet. My husband traveled for work, and he left me there alone, and that's when I experienced things that were odd. That feeling of being observed didn't go away. I stayed in the front rooms because there wasn't really better light there, and it's where our belongings were. The back part of the bungalow was always dark. The first thing I noticed was scratching sounds in the wall. It's Texas, so it could have been an animal doing that, but I heard what sounded like walking along the ceiling. I remembered one day I was watching a movie. There was this loud stomping up there. I was distractedly thinking to myself, damn, the neighbors are loud. Then I remembered there wasn't any upstairs in Hebers. Ran outside to see what was on the roof, and there was nothing. It really did sound like heavy footsteps coming from across the side of the house to the other. I was nocturnal back then. I stayed up all night either watching live streams or painting in the living room. I was in my bedroom watching an old black and white movie on this TV this particular night. Outside, I could see the pink dawn through the curtains. That's when I heard knocking. Just 2 sharp knocks in the upper left side of my bedroom wall over my bed. The bedroom was at the left corner side of the house. I wondered what it was. Then all along that side of the wall was a swooshing sound. I pictured somebody using a leafy branch just making swirls with it on the other side. Just a scratchy swirling sound. Hopped out of the bed to see what the heck that was. had to be people. Ran outside and over to the outside of the house, and there was no one. They couldn't have ran away. I guess it was just so odd to me. This happened a few more times before I finally answered that knock with a loud hello. And the knock itself sounded like a person's knock. Intentional to get attention. Not like a tapping or something bouncing off the wall. It was 2 distinct knocks. There was a hesitation, then it knocked 3 times, and I asked, "Who's there?" Then the knocking started going hard and fast. It sounded angry and loud. I took off to check the outside again, and nothing. No one was there. Went back inside, back to the bathroom. The frantic, loud knocking was now accompanied by that swirling sound. Moved from the left side of the wall to the ceiling, and that scared me. Called my friend, and then she told me that I wasn't supposed to ever answer the knock or go outside, for 2 reasons. If it had been a person scaring me, I could have been hurt. Then secondly, whatever that was, it was bad, and I interacted with it. Went on for 30 minutes. Left the bedroom to go sit shaking in the living room while I chatted with my friend. She wouldn't accept any pictures or videos of it either. After that occurrence, I made sure to ignore all noises. Just act like everything was okay and activity did die down. We painted the back room, but didn't seem to make it any brighter. Stayed gloomy. When we attempted to sleep in the master bedroom with the en-suite at the back of the house, neither of us could sleep. Facing the bedroom door, and several times when I woke up, that door would be open again. I felt as though somebody was staring at us from the kitchen each time. It was also very cold and uncomfortable in there. Moved away after a year.